I hired a babysitter for my 6-year-old a few months ago. I used a website to hire the same young girl every time because she was familiar with my son already. On this night, though, she wasn't available. I had somewhere to be at 5 and only needed someone to watch my son for a few hours, but there was only one babysitter able to come at that time. It was a 17-year-old boy named Ben who looked nice in the pictures. I scheduled him to be here at 4:30, then waited. At 4:30, I had my son turn off his video games so that I could introduce them, but Ben still didn't show. I was watching out the windows for his arrival, but at 5, I called the website and asked where he was. They told me he clocked in on their app, supposedly meaning he arrived and was babysitting already. After discussing it a bit more, they canceled it and apologized, but said no one was available to cover for him. I was really angry, being forced to cancel my plans. At 6, I made dinner for myself and my son, and we started watching a show together. In the middle of the episode, there was a knock at the front door. I paused the show and went up to look through the peephole. A guy was on the porch, and I saw his car parked in our driveway as well. I opened the door. "Hi, I'm Ben," he said. I gave him one of those "Are you serious right now" looks, hours late. "Just go," I said, closing the door in his face. Not the nicest thing to do on my part, but I was honestly even more upset that he chose to show up still. I sat back down and played the show again. After a couple minutes, though, I checked the window and saw that his car was still there in the driveway. A cold rush ran through me. I went back to the door and looked out the peephole. It was dark, and at first I didn't see anything, but then at the very bottom of the peephole, I saw him. He was standing very still, pressed all the way up against the door, like he was listening. I watched him for a few seconds, so creeped out that I was in a state of shock. I must have been visibly so, because my son called out to me in a worried voice. I snapped out of it and backed away, telling my son to go to his room and lock the door. I called the police, but I think Ben heard. He knocked on the front door, then the doorknob rattled, and he banged on the door again. I heard his footsteps move around to a nearby window, followed by him trying to pry it open. I ran around the house to make sure everything else was locked, then joined my son in his room while we waited for the police. 5 long minutes passed before I heard sirens approaching the house. When they pulled up, apparently Ben was sitting in his car, pretending like he was happy to see them. He made up a whole story about me being crazy and said he was just here to babysit at his scheduled time. His lies didn't last after I showed them the confirmation email saying he was supposed to come 2 hours ago. The next few weeks were overcomplicated, but at the end of everything, not much happened. Ben lost his job, but aside from that, nothing else was really done because he denied everything. It's really scary because if he had shown up on time, then I would have left my son alone with him. When I was 18, I was a babysitter for 3 young boys across town from me. Adam 3, Bobby 5, and Chris 7. Adam and Chris were the easiest to take care of. Adam was a surprisingly well-behaved toddler, and Chris just liked to play his video games and watch TV. Bobby, on the other hand, was very moody, a picky eater, and difficult to go to sleep. I had worked for this family for months, and I was somewhat close with their mom, Lucy, who was raising them by herself. They had a decently modest middle-class house. Lucy's parents would help her out with finances and such. All 3 boys had their own rooms. Lucy worked nights at the time, so I'd always babysit till around midnight on weeknights, and my college classes would start in the afternoon, so it worked out schedule and sleep-wise. One night after playing some Nintendo Wii games with Chris, I put Adam to bed, and not long after, Bobby. Chris's bedtime would be 9:30, Bobby's would be 9. After tucking Bobby in, I started telling Chris to start changing into his PJs after his next game was over. Chris insisted I play one more game of Wii tennis with him, so I made a deal that he'd go to bed after if I did. During our game, though, Bobby started crying for me up from his room. I paused the game and went upstairs. As I entered his room, he said there's a monster in his closet. I laughed, and I believe I pinched his cheek and said something along the lines of, "There's no such thing as monsters, but I'll leave the door open so you feel safer." Then I asked if that made him feel better, and he nodded. Chris was downstairs calling for me to come back, all annoyed, So I went back to the game of tennis and we resumed, and we eventually finished the game with no interruptions. At this point, Chris went upstairs to change into his pajamas and brush his teeth, and I was alone in the kitchen watching TV. That's when Bobby's cries from upstairs echoed down again. I went up to his room again, and he was hiding under his covers. He said once again, "There's a monster in the closet." I heard it. I looked at the closet door, which was closed. I looked at it for a while, actually, then back at Bobby and asked, "Why do you think there's a monster in there?" And he replied, "I keep hearing it moving." I asked him if he wanted me to take a look, and he shook his head. No. I walked closer to the closet anyway, and he said, I didn't take him seriously until I heard something in the closet myself. It was very clearly the sound of something alive in that closet that tapped into the door or something behind the door. Bobby whispered, "See, I turned around and picked up Bobby and said, 'We're going to another room.'" I also grabbed Chris from the bathroom and brought him into Adam's room where I locked the door. Adam and Lucy's room share a Jack and Jill bathroom with 2 entrances. I went into the bathroom and called Lucy and quietly asked if there was a possibility of there being an animal in the house or in the walls, because there were sounds that Bobby was hearing that I heard myself. She sounded concerned right away and wanted me to check the closet. I kept her on the phone as I went back to Bobby's room, but the closet door was now open, confirmed that there was someone in the house with us. I told Lucy, and she freaked out, telling me it was most likely her crazy ex and to get the kids out of the house. I suddenly felt like my life were in danger and her ex was going to come out of nowhere and run at me. I went to Adam's room and managed to get the 3 kids out of the room. But just as I did, I heard the front door to the house slam shut. I peeked down into the living room and there was no one there, but the front door was shut. He must have made an exit while he could. I went to lock the door, then called 911. Lucy came home from work early and was there when the police came. Without cameras or anything, there was no proof that it was her ex, though. Her ex is the father of Adam, but she keeps him away from her because of their past that I won't get into for her privacy. Long story short, he can't take it, and she just recently blocked his number, which would explain the possibility of him breaking into the house. The police recommended changing the locks on the doors, and such to Lucy she understood I wouldn't feel comfortable staying in that house for a while after that. So she started letting the kids stay with a relative or one of her parents coming to watch the kids. I don't know what happened after that because we kind of fell out of contact. I didn't really like the fact that she was okay with me checking the closet when she was already suspicious that it was her ex. It was definitely a horrifying experience. This happened when I was 8 years old, and my little sister was 6. Our parents hired a one-time babysitter for this weekend that they'd be away on a couple's trip. It was some 16-year-old boy that responded to an ad that my mom posted in the public library. He happened to go to the high school that my parents went to, so I feel like they felt a safer connection with him. He was watching us for 3 nights from Thursday to Sunday. His name was Nathan. I don't know his last name. If I did, I'd say it. Most of the first night is a blur. I was only 8 after all. I remember not much other than playing Ratchet and Clank on my PlayStation in the basement all night because I was obsessed. Same thing the next day on Friday. I was playing Ratchet and Clank for so long that I guess Nathan came down to build a rapport with me and asked to play with me. He told me he also liked the game, so we played multiplayer versus mode. From what I remember, I actually was having fun and started to like Nathan. The next day I had my friend Zachary over and we played soccer in the backyard, which Nathan volunteered to ref for as he came outside with my little sister. Basically, he was a completely normal-seeming dude for my 8-year-old mind. Zachary left not long after we all ate the pizza that Nathan ordered with the money I assume my parents left for food. That night, before going to sleep, I was playing on my DS in bed when Nathan came in and asked if I wanted to play more video games, and I'm sure I respectfully told him I'm tired. He would leave as expected, but that's not where this ends. I always was a heavy sleeper as a kid, not anymore. But when I was 8, waking up in the middle of the night wasn't a regular occurrence. So waking up in my pitch-black room was definitely a weird thing to happen that night. I remember flipping on my side after hearing my door closing. I looked across the room, and before I could digest what was happening and scream or react in any way, I heard Nathan go shh and whisper, "It's me." I didn't respond, but then he slowly got closer to my bed, pulled the covers off of me, and I swear he was about to get in the bed before I screamed, "Stop," or something along those lines, and he froze. I got out of bed and left the room. I went to my little sister's room, took a blanket from under her bed and laid on the floor, shaking, feeling extremely confused and uncomfortable. The whole next day I didn't see Nathan. I knew he was in the house because he fed my little sister breakfast, but I knew he was avoiding me now. I couldn't exactly call my parents because I didn't know either of their cell phone numbers. It was a weird long day of me staying in my room and playing games with my little sister. Nathan never came in once. That night, I couldn't sleep for obvious reasons, and I don't know how much time passed before hearing my door creak open again. This time, I didn't look up. I laid there until I heard the door close, and then a few moments of silence later, I looked up to the door, but he wasn't there this time. I turned on the lamp to confirm this, but even at 8, I knew he was creeping around again, and I wanted to go to sleep in my sister's room to protect her in my mind. I got up and took my pillows and blanket to my sister's room. I saw Nathan was already halfway towards my sister's bed in the pitch-black room. I yelled at him to get away from her, and he told me to calm down. He's just checking on her. He hurried out of the room, and I locked the door. That was the last time I ever saw him. The next morning, I woke up on my sister's floor and told her let's play games in her room until Mom and Dad get back, which was early in the day, thank God. We heard our parents get home and talk with Nathan outside, but we didn't leave her room until he was gone. My parents asked me why I slept on her floor. I don't remember what I said, but I know I didn't tell them the real reason. In fact, I never did. I regret it often, not telling them all those years ago, so that Nathan guy would get in trouble. I'm scared because of me, he might have actually at some point successfully hurt a child. It's sadly something I kept bottled up my whole childhood, simply because I felt too embarrassed and awkward to tell bottled up my whole childhood, simply because I felt too embarrassed and awkward to tell anyone. I did babysit for one family, so I arrived at this big old house, a few blocks away from my parents' house, at around 6:30 Friday evening. The parents of the kid seemed charming as hell, and the kid is one of the more adorable little tykes I've had the good fortune of minding. We go over a brief list of rules, what the kid is and isn't allowed to eat, how much I'll be paid, how long I'll be sitting for, that sort of thing. Then the parents head out to whatever fancy party they had been planning on attending. All goes well for a little while. The kid wouldn't eat their carrot batons, but when I pretended they were delicious by taking little bites myself, they soon broke into a smile and pretty much demolished the little bowl of hummus we were sharing. With the kid fed, I give her a bath, tuck her into bed, and that's that. It was honestly one of the easier jobs I'd had, right up until the sun started to go down. So once the kid is asleep, I head downstairs to order a pizza on the parents' dollar. Like I said, they were perfectly nice and polite when we first met, and it's not often a job comes with free food. Pizza arrives pretty quickly, and I even tipped the delivery guy a few dollars just to say thank you for being so fast. He's literally counting out the change in dollar bills when his head snaps to the side, like he's looking into the bushes at the side of the house. I ask him if everything is okay, peering out from the door to see what he's looking at, but there's nothing, just dark bushes. He says something along the lines of, "Guess I'm just tired. My mind's playing tricks on me," laughs awkwardly, then walks back to his car while thanking me again for the tip. I didn't think anything of it. I mean, it was probably a cat or something, right? So I go back inside to eat, have a full-on carb overload, and end up just lying there on the couch watching TLC. There were these big bay windows in the family's TV room, and I had drawn the curtains earlier to block out the glare on the TV. Only I hadn't drawn them all the way, and there was a slight crack in the curtains that allowed me to see out into the dark front yard. At one point, my eyes were drawn to this little crack, and I could swear I saw a dark shape where streetlights were previously visible. I sit up, focusing my eyes on the shape and wondering if it were my mind playing tricks on me this time, when it moved. I wasn't going nuts. I had been looking at someone, or something, who was in turn looking at me through the big old windows. That's about when I started to freak out. I had been super chilled all evening, but now I was getting that distinctly paranoid feeling like someone was watching me. someone who didn't exactly have the best of intentions. I run around the house, making sure all the doors and windows are locked as a precaution, all before keeping their cordless phone as close as possible so that, if it came to it, I could call the cops. Anyway, I've secured all the windows and doors, shoved the cordless phone into my hoodie's front pouch, and have even positioned a little lead bat near the couch so that I was sort of armed. So by that point, I started to feel relatively safe again. If there was some creeper lurking outside looking to prey on a teenage babysitter, they would get one hell of a rude awakening when I waved my bat at them and screamed that the cops were on the way. So I lie back on the couch, but naturally find myself unable to relax. I open the curtains back up so I can see if anyone is hanging around in the front yard, keeping my eyes on the windows every so often in between watching whatever social train wreck is on TLC. Nothing happens for a while, and I start to think it was all just in my head or something, right about the time I get up to wander into the kitchen to grab a drink of water. As I'm in there, I get that intense feeling that I'm being watched. I turn to see that same dark shape in the kitchen window, only this time, I rush into action. I called 911 into the phone, telling the dispatcher I need the cops to address redacted ASAP, that there is a home invasion in progress. I honestly don't know if it was the adrenaline or I was just sick of goddamn pervs thinking they can get away with stuff like that. After screaming out that the cops were on their way, I ran into the TV room, grabbed the little league bat, and just ran for the back door which led out of the kitchen and into the backyard. What happened next is frankly astounding. As I ran at the guy, baseball bat in hand, ready to bash his goddamn brains out right there in the yard, I recognized him instantly. It was a face I'd seen before, not long ago at all. It was the kid's dad. So long story short, the dad of the kid I'd been babysitting had, for whatever reason, decided he needed to see what kind of babysitter I was. So apparently he drove his wife to whatever party they were headed to, turned back, saying he'd forgotten something, then decided to watch me over the course of about an hour or two to see if I was worth the cash they were spending. Obviously, since no crime was actually committed, there was no one to charge. The dad offered me a sincere apology, even offered me double the cash just to finish the night up, but I refused.